James Ham, 1320 Kings Insider, joining us here. And James, before we get to the draft last night and some of the fallout, I want to ask you the question that I just asked Kenny. What is your biggest concern right now today, June 24th? What is your biggest concern for the Sacramento Kings headed into the season?
Well, that they need 3 more rotation players. Like their team's just not deep enough. It's not good enough. They need to make substantive changes as soon as possible. So my biggest concern, I guess, would be that you just got through draft night and you only added 1 piece.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest concern. You didn't take advantage of the opportunity that is the draft to move off of a player like Richaun Holmes, who, again, I like Richaun Holmes. I just don't think he fits what they're doing going forward. You didn't take advantage of that opportunity to go out and shop Harrison Barnes like you were just talking about. It was a missed opportunity in my book.
I asked that question. Sorry, I asked that question, James, because I realized as I was talking to Kyle during the commercial break there a moment ago that I think my biggest concern about this team headed into the season is De'Aaron Fox. And it's because we're asking him to do something he's never done before. And we've said it repeatedly. De'Aaron needs to be the man. De'Aaron needs to be the man. De'Aaron needs to be the man. At some point, he actually has to be, or we have to accept that he's not. And I don't know at this point what's more likely. Fixing the forward position that Kenny was talking about right there, adding the rotational players that James was talking about, or De'Aaron, in fact, being the man. I don't know which one's more likely. And maybe there is a situation where the Sacramento Kings are good and De'Aaron doesn't have to do what I'm suggesting he does. I just feel like we keep I think there's a level where maybe the pressure got a little heavy last year. Maybe the frustration got a little heavy last year, and completely understandable. But I feel like I'm asking De'Aaron to do something that I haven't seen him do. And I'm starting to wonder, is what I'm asking him to do even possible?
No, I mean, I think that's a legitimate question. I do. But I'll say this. I think De'Aaron Fox is going to come in and be the player that everyone thinks he should be and could be and will and should have been and could be, all of those things. I think he will. I think right now he's super dedicated. I think he's excited about a new coach. I think he's excited about the pairing with Sabonis. I think he is ready. He is ready to take that huge leap, right? I still don't think you have enough. Like, I think that De'Aaron Fox can be really, really good. Give him the support he needs. And that means legitimate players around him. And, it's really hard for some of these guys, the Alex Lins, the, Mo Harklesses, and, even guys like Trey Lyles and Terrence Davis. Like, when you ask them to do more than they're capable of doing, then everything just goes haywire. And it's not on them. It's on the fact that you don't have enough strong rotation level players. And until you get that, until you're 6, 7, 8 deep with really, really strong pieces, you're not competing for a playoff spot. And so you got one in Keegan Murray. I like Keegan. I think he can be a rotational piece long-term for the Sacramento Kings. Now go get me the rest. Like, where are the rest of the guys coming from? And don't start quoting De'Aaron Fox. I mean, like Harrison Barnes or Richaun Holmes. They don't fit what you're doing long-term. Harrison is not going to stay past this season. I almost guarantee it. Unless they get him to sign an extension right now, you got to trade him right now. Because if not, it becomes a distraction mid-season. And so that's just my opinion. Clearly, I was right with my mock, but not right with what I've been saying to you guys the whole time about the number 4 pick and what I would have done with the number 4 pick. But, that's where I'm at when it comes to Barnes. Like, what if you are good and you get to the trade deadline, but you know that Harrison Barnes really doesn't want to be here after this season, but you're good and you're in the playoff hunt and you have to trade him or lose him for nothing? That's not a good position to be in. Do it now. Pull off the Band-Aid now. Reset your roster and let's see what this thing can be.
I remember the other day you mentioned that the Kings with this particular roster. Well, you mentioned it a lot, but they needed 3 guys. Was there a like outside of the trade? Was there a way they could have got that done? I'm not even saying trade the 4, but you mentioned last night with Rashawn Holmes and Harrison Barnes. Was there a realistic way that could have happened last night? Is it because I would say they dropped the ball, but is that not being fair to Monty, where there just maybe wasn't anything out there?
Well, I think that's what we have to look at. We won't know. There's always like a post-mortem on these things. We need to know what it was that was offered and all that stuff, and we might not ever know that, to be honest. We might not. So, like, I know people are like sign and trade for Bridges. I see Michael here.
That's a dumbass.
Like, none of those are going to happen. Like, the Kings are not here's, again, like, I'll reset this. We just did a pod, and I'll say this again. Like, you're the Sacramento Kings. There's normally, for every other team in the league, or for 80% of the teams in the league, there are 3 ways to make yourself better. There's the draft, there's trades, and there's free agency. Wipe out free agency, because you're the Sacramento Kings, and the best free agent you've ever signed in your entire 36, 37 years in Sacramento is Vlade Divac. That's it. That's the best free agent you've ever signed. So let's just wipe that off the table. First, they don't have a bunch of cap space, and even in the cap space they do have, there's going to be a lot of competition. It's not a great free agent class anyways, so just kind of take that off. Now, could you find a low-level rotational player? Maybe, but are you going to find a legitimate starter that can step in that's better than what you have right now? Probably not. Like, there's an outside shot, but I just wipe that off the books and say, okay, what's next? The draft just happened, and you took 1 player. You had 3 picks, and you took 1 player. And teams around you are making all these moves and doing all these crazy things, getting Jeremy Grant, making moves up and down the board. Sold off your picks, because that's all that is. Like, you just traded the 37th pick for 2 like way off in the distance bad second-round picks.
Why do you think he did that? Or they
I
did
don't
that?
I don't know. Because Jaden Hardy was sitting right there falling in your lap, a guy who has top 5 talent and had a rough 12 games with the Ignite. 12 games, that's all they played. So something like that. I think it's 12. But, like, I would have much preferred to gamble on a high-end talent. You got no one, Keegan Murray turns 22 in August, and you got no one under the age of 22 on your roster. And you went out and you signed a couple of guys, Keon Ellis and Jariah Horn. Horn is probably like a summer league contract, but Keon Ellis, they at least got on a 2-way. This team has roster spots. I'm confused. Like, again, they're going to have some sort of answer, I would assume, but it'll probably be like the answer that we got last night about Sasha, Vazenkov. Like, it was a no answer. It would, like, you skirted around whether he was going to be able to come over and play. Like, completely skirted it. Like, oh, we love him. He does this, and this. Is he coming over? Oh, he's such, like, never answered the question. So if he's not going to answer the question, that probably means no, and maybe they get him over. But that, again, is one of my...
If nothing else they don't know now, because I'm sure that's something he would have loved to trumpet. Yeah, of course he's coming over. That's why we acquired him. Obviously, if it's either no or they don't know.
Yeah. So, no, and I mean, I think it's interesting, like, again, just looking at the chatty house, Hardy isn't cracking the top 6 in the guard rotation. It's not about this year. You don't have any young players. None. Like, when we get to game 60 and this team is heading for another 35-win season, that's when you bring in those guys and let them get some season in and, like, let them play. They don't have those guys. Last year is a 25-year-old Chimezi Metu, 26, 27-year-old Damian Jones. Like, they've centered themselves on, like, this middle age thing where they're trying to go 23, 24, 25. But every team has young players that they're bringing up. Kings don't. Sold their picks.
Yeah, and that's the frustrating thing about that second-round pick. It's not necessarily the player. It's not necessarily a second-round pick. It's that you had an opportunity to take a flyer on a guy like that, and you just gave that opportunity away for nothing. And if I can be perfectly honest, 2 picks you might not even be around to choose. Like the 20, what was it, 24 and 28 or something like that, to 2024, 2028. So like, what, I don't understand. I don't understand why you would do that. I don't see the benefit in that. Maybe James, you could tell me, is there some kind of monetary benefit in that? I don't know. I don't understand why you would just throw that opportunity away essentially for nothing.
See, when we talked about the 2022 first round pick, the number 4 pick, right? We said, hey, look, this could be the last time they're ever up at number 4. First of all, I don't believe that at all at this point. Yeah, I'll go on record, like, unless massive changes happen, they could be up this high again, like as soon as next season, as soon as the season after, or the season after that. But my point is that when you have the 4th pick, a lot of the reason why you don't trade it is because even if you're taking back future firsts, it's very unlikely for them to ever be as valuable as that number 4 pick. Chances are you're getting the 50th pick, or you're getting the 24th pick in the draft down the road. Like, again, OKC has all these mystical picks, right? Most of those are super lottery protected, and they're from good teams. And so they're really not worth what we want to act like they are. So my point with that is that you just traded the 37th pick, which is a good second round pick. That's a 7th pick in the second round. And you traded it to a team that just went to the Western Conference finals, right? The Dallas Mavericks, who have a 23-year-old, 24-year-old Luka Doncic, who's a superstar, who that team is going to be good in 2 years. That might be the 50th pick in the draft. It could be the 58th pick in the draft. It could be the 52nd pick in the draft. My point is, you're never getting a 37th pick back. And a 52nd pick, I would say there's probably a handful of times that is actually become a rotational player. Like Isaiah Thomas being one of them, a player in the between 50 and 60. Those aren't valuable picks. So I am confused why you give up the 37th pick for what amounts to nothing. And you could say, oh, well, maybe they want the roster space. Like, they got plenty of roster spots, and they have 2-way contracts. Like, make someone earn it if that's what you want to do. But I thought that was one of the bigger head scratchers, just because you don't have any young players at all. Like, in the NBA, every team has, like, your Jamias Ramsey that's hanging out there that's 19 years old and needs to learn how to play, and you hide him in the G League and you bring him up and you do all this stuff. They don't have that guy. So you have this staff that's allegedly like a great development staff. Well, go get them someone to develop.
James, Monty sounded really confident when talking about Keegan Murray last night. Did you get that impression from him? Am I reading too much into it? I watched the press conference and just thought he's glowing about Keegan Murray in the same way he did Tyrese and Davion. This did not, and you've kind of said this all along in a roundabout way, this did not seem like a difficult decision for him at all.
No. I think they tied themselves to Keegan really early in the process. We were hearing little stuffs here and there, but in the last like 48 hours, I was hearing some that's why my mock draft the night before said Keegan Murray. Like, I think they had really tied themselves to that pick. And like, I just think that there's a danger in doing that early in a draft process. Like, I know they watch film, and I know they went to like pro days for some of these players, but like, an interview can change your mind on a player. And I know that they fell in love with Keegan, but they fell in love with Keegan and had no way to move from 4 because they fell in love with him. So if you move down to 5 or you move down to 6, you risk losing him because you fell in love with him. Well, my point would be, if you would have had that same experience, if you would have like had Ben Mathurin or Dyson Daniels or AJ Griffin or they had Sohan as the only other guy, but if you would have had all of these other prospects who should have been lining up to come and hang out with you through, maybe one of those guys would have like sparked your interest in a different way, like Keegan did. And then you would have felt better about moving down 1 or 2 spots because you would have liked someone else equal to or close to like what you fell in love with Keegan Murray. So I just think it's a really interesting. Like, I've never seen a draft work out this way. I've never seen a draft where a team with the number 4 pick in the draft had one guy come in for a workout, one guy come in for a meet and greet, and outside of that, no one outside of the, like, I think Tari Eason said he had conversations with the Kings a couple of times. What do you go, like 15, 16, 14, 15, 16, around there? Like, this whole group of players that you should have been doing, like, your standard NBA homework where they're coming through and they're having, like, legitimate conversations with you. You get to know who they are as people a lot better. You take them out to dinner, all those things, a standard draft process. It really does feel like when Vlade Divac said a couple of years ago about Emmanuel Moody. Well, he didn't want to come work out for Vlade, so Vlade didn't want to draft him. Okay. Monty didn't say that. Everything that happened on Thursday night said that. Same thing. You don't want to go to Sacramento? Okay. Just tell your agent you don't want to go work out there. So now we have, 60 players in the draft, and of the top 30, how many of them came to Sacramento?
We talked about earlier in the week. I think you said the Kings will choose their fate in this draft. It's a fork in the road moment. Are they really about that action, about trying to go to the playoffs? Or are they going to be setting themselves up to kind of tear this whole thing down and try to go in a different direction, try to rebuild or build or whatever we want to say? Do you think that happened last night, or is it still kind of to be determined?
No, it's still to be determined. Like, they could think that's the path they chose, but, like, let's be honest with, like, what the team looks like right now. Like, again, like, not to be like the harbinger of doom here, but, like, at a certain point, you can talk about wanting to get to the playoffs. It's always been the goal to get to the playoffs. There is no mandate. That's what Monty said. There is no mandate, but that's our goal. We want to get there, all that stuff. They can talk about that all they want, but 2 years ago, they went into free agency and literally didn't sign a soul outside of Hassan Whiteside and Glenn Robinson III. Like, that's not, and you lost Bogdanovich. That's not showing. You say one thing, you're telling me something different. Like, your actions are saying something different. So, again, like, this should be really interesting about, like, what happens between now and the start of free agency. Can they land any sort of mid-level free agent? All of those things could happen. But, like, there is so much work to do. Like, I said it before, there are 3 or 4 rotational pieces have to be swapped out on this team in order for them to be good. And you got one, okay? Where's the rest? And that's a problem. Because, I mean, just because you have Harrison Barnes and you have Richaun Holmes on the roster, that doesn't mean I would include Harrison Barnes as a rotational piece. But for this season, like, Richaun Holmes, your backup center, like, that's not a rotational piece. Like, he can't get enough minutes on the court, and that's because of the circumstance. It's not because he's a bad player or anything else, but, I'm not counting him as a rotational player when he might play 12 to 15 minutes a night. That's not really what we're talking about here.
Does any of this change their aggressiveness, do you think, towards Dante DiVincenzo? Is that situation a little bit more urgent maybe than it was prior to the draft, or no trades accumulating, or no second round picks being taken?
I don't know. Like, he's a player that they clearly have valued in the past, but just by the way that they handled him at the end of the season, I don't know. Like, I think that there's a good chance that he gets an offer that's bigger than what they want to pay. If it's reasonable, I think they would match. But to be honest with you, like, who else are you getting that's better in free agency?
Yeah, I think you have to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of where you're at. I mean, you could hope that you could, like, get a guy like Gary Harris or something. I would like Gary Harris. I think he would be a nice player, but is he an upgrade? I don't know. Like, there's a lot of players around that type of, value in this free agent class. There's not a bunch of players that, I mean, they're not getting Bradley Beal or Kyrie Irving to walk through the door. So like, and DeAndre Ayton, I mean, that rumor like that they could be interested in DeAndre Ayton is like, okay, like what position does he play?
Right.
Like he stands under the basket and puts his hand up. That's what he does. So like, how would he work with Sabonis? Yeah, it's complex. Like roster construction is like it's very difficult, but you have to be aggressive and you have to take advantage of, again, the draft, free agency, and trades. You're the Kings, so free agency is like such a small part of what you're doing every year. So it's got to be the draft, and it's got to be through trades.
And look, we seeing it a lot in the chat, and I know people riding around listening on the radio or on the Odyssey app or anything like that. Oh, you guys are being too negative. You're being too doom and gloom. You act like the season is done. Nobody's saying that. Once again, I'll say it for the 40th time today. I'm probably the one person around here that thinks they're actually closer with the roster they have than most people do. Like, I think just the addition of Sabonis and Fox alone and having them for a full season, I think they're trending in the right direction compared to where they were last year. But here's what we're saying.
Stop asking me stupid questions.
This feels way too tense, man. I was like, you know what? Fix everything. Little Hardaway drop.
But look,
Hardaway drop fixes things.
What we're saying is, and James laid it out perfectly, you have 3 opportunities to get better. And I thought last night was a waste of one of the opportunities. Not to say that Keegan won't be good and Keegan won't help him, but I don't think they maximize their opportunity to improve their roster last night. And that's disappointing. And not only is it disappointing, but it also puts more pressure in the margin for error for what they do in the other 2 areas, trade and free agency. It makes the margin for error that much more thin because they got to get it right now because I feel they didn't take advantage of an opportunity in the one category on draft night to improve. That's what we're saying. And we're trying to look around and figure out, all right, well, how do you do this then in free agency and trades? I got to be honest with you. I'm not seeing it right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the difficult thing. It's not about Keegan at this point. When you get through the draft and you get to number 4 at like 5:30 in the afternoon, and then nothing else happens the rest of the night, like the NBA just happened to you. You didn't happen to the NBA. And so my point is that like that's an opportunity to move off of a contract that you don't love. It's an opportunity to go out and get somebody and a potential young player as well. Like it's just, again, the optimal word is opportunity. That's what it is. And like, if you walk out of that and you still have the same roster, it feels with Keegan Murray, like Keegan Murray, this team won 30 games. Okay. Can Fox and Sabonis being healthy and playing together yield you a few more wins? Yes, they can. So what are we at? 35, 36. Can Mike Brown offer a few more wins? Yeah, okay, I'll give you that. We're 38. Where do you get the other 8 to 10 wins that it takes to get to the playoffs? And, again, this can be a slow build, but that's not what they're talking about. That's not what they've been promoting. And not only that, on top of that, like, you take a big step backwards when Harrison Barnes leaves his team. So, like, we can talk about, hey, they just got better this year. Okay, you take another step backwards at that point. And so while, yes, you got Keegan Murray, you lost the guy that he basically replaces what you had with Harrison Barnes. So I would like to see them be able to do more. And maybe I'm being too hard on them. Maybe they're going to do something magical in the next, 10 days, and we're just going to be awestruck. But I got caught thinking that way, like, way too many times already with these guys, because that's not typically the way it happens. And I would hope that, that there is some pressure, but maybe there isn't, because I see, again, like teams like Portland going out there and making moves. I see teams, like New Orleans, like they went out and made a big move as well. They also end up with, a nice young player, and, there are people that are moving and shaking, but they might have,
New Orleans has a nice young player on their roster coming back who didn't play last year also.
Exactly. So, like, you have to try to keep up with these guys. And It's hard. I mean, we saw Minnesota move all over the place, right? Minnesota was moving and shaking. Like, all right,
Detroit was
good.
making moves.
This
Oh,
team
yeah.
seems like it's constantly drowning. Like,
It's a team in the West that I'm concerned about.
yeah, they just feel like they're constantly drowning. Like I look at Portland and go, I'm not like enamored by Portland, but is Portland like a little bit better? Yeah, they might be. Where does that leave Sacramento? I think ESPN had Sacramento at a top 5 pick next year.
Yeah, they have them at the number 5 pick in next year's draft. Which means
This is not on you.
I'm just trying to break the ice. So I'm trying to.
I got you.
let's be honest too. They have them at the number 5 pick in the draft next year. That means they think they're worse because this team was the 7th pick in the draft and happened to move up. So that means ESPN thinks it got worse.
That'd be such a fail if
Well, they're banking on Portland.
They're banking on other teams getting better.
On Oklahoma City. They might even be banking on Detroit all being better.
that'd be a failure. That'd be unacceptable with Fox and Sabonis and Mike Brown here to be worse. I don't really care if Portland or all those other people got better. If you're worse with Fox and Sabonis for a whole year and Mike Brown, a lot of people got to go.
Yeah. No, it's intriguing. Like, I don't want to be so negative. I totally get it. I just like being realistic, and I'm not going to sugarcoat things and make people feel like, like everything's okay. Like there's rainbows shooting out everywhere. Like you got to be realistic.
Happiness in the fedora. That's what it boils down to. There's happiness in the fedora. We'll see if we can get Fedora Ham to return. We'll come back, James. I want to get your opinion on what happened at the top of the draft, where it was Jabari for months. It was Jabari. I was asleep. I missed it. Apparently, Vegas got wild before the draft. Kenny had to tell me about it the next day with Paolo Banchero going number 1. Adrian Wojnarowski said number 1, Jabari, number 2, Chet, number 3, Paolo. And then like 10 minutes before the draft started, they finally took D'Lo and Casey's advice. And Paolo Banchero goes number 1. I want to get your thoughts on that. We'll talk more about the Sacramento Kings, the other things that happened in the draft. And most importantly, where do the Kings go now? Free agency begins 1 week from today. Are there still moves to be made? Are there still names out there that the Kings should be targeting? We'll touch on that when D'Lo and Casey return with James Ham here on ESPN 1320. Sorry, man. It was either early or late.
Oh, that's all right.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Like I hate just like being negative, but
it was tough, man. It felt like yesterday when the pick was made, it was like, all right, I wasn't expecting that. And combined with like the quietness of everything, it just sucked all the excitement out of the air. It was like even if you like Keegan Murray, which is great, like that's fine. To think that yesterday was a success is tough. Like, and maybe tomorrow becomes a success, or maybe next Friday becomes a success. It just feels like yesterday wasn't.
I'll tell you what it feels like. This is what it kind of feels like. Last night, they somehow booked a concert on draft night, right? And on draft night, when you have the 4th pick in the draft, you should have your fans in the building celebrating a pick. They should be in there celebrating. And you know why you have all your fans in the building celebrating the pick? Because it's exciting. And the moment that they make the pick, you up the chance of somebody signing up for season tickets, right? Like that's how teams in the middle of summer, you want them in your building, all this excitement, everyone comes out, they buy the new jersey, they're like hanging out, everyone's excited. Instead, they had a draft party outside in 105-degree heat while a concert went on inside. It's missed opportunities. That like it's the same thing. It's like you just missed, like who doesn't look at the NBA draft if you're the Sacramento Kings? who have had a lottery pick for 16 consecutive seasons, who doesn't match up the schedule and make sure that you don't book a concert on the night of the draft? Like and you had 4,000 or 5,000 people. That's what they said, and I don't know who they were. I don't know who that.
Well, I also heard there was an NFL draft party out there last night too. So
yeah,
I'll fill you in on that joke later.
No, I got you.
I'll fill you in on that.
David, it's only 3:30, big dog. Chill. It's only 3:30, bro.
Someone asked when. I'm sorry, I don't see the tweet or the message when Keegan's introductory press conference is. It's tomorrow. It is tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Yeah, Keegan and Monty McNair will be available tomorrow at 10 a.m.
Yeah. I didn't ask any questions last night.
Ivan,
I noticed that.
Ivan, we tried to explain it. Maybe you weren't listening. It was an opportunity to build the roster. And you have a situation in Harrison Barnes, who Ham just told you, he's probably gone. So you could have swapped him out potentially for somebody for a little more, somebody who's going to be here a little longer, and added him to the starting line. Like there was an opportunity to build the roster last night, and they only came away with one player when they had an opportunity to maybe get they could have got like 3 players essentially. I mean, Sasha's one, but we don't know if he's coming in the 37, and build a roster and build like a developmental thing. Like you talk about with Jaden, it's not about Jaden coming in and starting next year. It's about getting him in your program and trying to develop him, like Toronto's done a couple of times with Siakam and Fred VanVleet. You know, you got to get those type of people in your system, and they just didn't yesterday. And that's after they already had 2 second-round guys that they cut a year ago. Like they have nobody coming up in the system.
Well, that and like you put up the rotation. First of all, Keegan.
Here we come. Sorry, James. All right, guys, we're gonna be really happy the final 30 minutes of this show. That's what they're calling for. We need happiness. This team. Trey Lyles is solid. This is like he's gonna be just fine. That's Kenny.
I already told you, Trey Lyles, man. Come on, man. Hey, Josh Jackson. You're the only one out here repping for Josh Jackson.
I mean, come on, man. Former number 4 pick, James. Come on,
boy.
Hey,
I'm dead serious when I said they should give him a 2-way deal or a league minimum.
I was gonna gloss over that. We all know that you're serious.
Give him a league minimum.
Well, you might as well.
That's what I'm about to say. It ain't like you got to give it to a second rounder. You might as well give it to him.
You got to have somebody fill the roster spot. James.
I'm looking at that, like the rotation they put up there, and let's just break it down. You have Sabonis and Fox, right? Mm-hmm. Those are your 2 starters. You have Harrison Barnes in the final year of his contract. That could work out because he could have a great year because he's in contract year. But at the same time, you're going to lose him at the end of the year. You have Keegan Murray, who's a rookie, who we have no idea what any rookie will do in the NBA. So if one of your starting 5 is Keegan Murray, even if we think he's NBA ready, that does not mean he's NBA ready. That means that he's going to play, but he's got to play because you don't have any other players. You got to Dante DiVincenzo. Isn't he that guy that for 25 games last year you decided not to play in your starting lineup? So he's your starter, even though he wasn't good enough to start in their eyes, or they chose not to start him over Justin Holiday. Okay, let's get to Trey Lyles. Trey Lyles he has a team option at $2.6 million. Nothing says this team will pick that option up. Damian Jones, you brought up. Oh, Damian Jones is an unrestricted free agent. So go ahead and do your rotation again and tell me where the answers are. And that's where the reality. I like Mitchell. I like the possibility of Terrence Davis, but he was really bad early in the season, then got hurt a couple of times. Again, there's this team has a long way to go before you can say that they're an NBA roster.
Or Ivan looking at his computer like,
That's the gratitude I get from pieces of crap.
okay, I'm watching this.
Yes, like, hang on, hold my beer. Let's go.
Trying to be positive and
That's the gratitude I get from you.
That's the gratitude I get from you pieces of crap.
I hope Keegan Murray cuts a promo like that tomorrow.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. How do we get to the promised land then? If the biggest bargaining chip was that number 4 pick, the number 4 pick is gone. Obviously, Monty really likes Keegan Murray. This isn't a pick that he drafted to trade. Like, Keegan Murray is a guy who is going to play for the Sacramento Kings. He's probably going to start for the Sacramento Kings. Oh, okay, what now? There's Harrison's contract, the Rashawn's contract, but like, what's the target? I mean, John Collins doesn't make sense anymore, right? Can you do something for Kevin Huerter and Bogey that like maybe sits a little bit better that you just leave John Collins out of it?
Yeah, I don't know, because that's the problem. Like, maybe, well, I mean, we'll ask that tomorrow at Keegan's press conference. Maybe they'll try to convince us tomorrow that Keegan Murray can play the 3, because that's something this franchise has done a couple of times. Like, you remember they tried to convince us Jason Thompson could play the 3, and then Mike Krzyzewski tried to convince everyone that Marvin Bagley could play the 3. So, yeah, no. To be honest, that's the problem. I like John Collins. I think I would still chase John Collins, but at the end of the day, you got to hope that Keegan Murray can play the 3, and if he can't, and you got a player $102 million over the next 4 years, again,
that feels like a dangerous game, friendo. Like that doesn't feel like a good plan to try to move somebody out of position. That feels like a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, I would agree.
The whole opposite way, and I would try and get one of them guards to play the 3. I would maybe go
Terrence
Fox, Davion, DiVincenzo, or Terrence, either one of them. But I think that, and I think they're physical enough where on most nights they can get away with playing the 3. If you traded Harrison for somebody, Collins, or I don't know who you would trade him for, but if you weren't able to get like a starting 3 in your eyes back, I would go 3 guard that way. And I think Dante and Terrence Davis, I think they're physical enough to be able to hold up most nights. I don't know if that's good enough to get you in the postseason, but I think you can go 3 guard with those guys.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, they tried the 3 guard set last year and it didn't work at all. I've been on record saying, like, look, that team looks a lot different with Sabonis if you're trying to run a 3 guard set than it does with Rashawn Holmes. And that's no disrespect to Rashawn Holmes. He's just a natural rim runner that isn't a passer. And so, it's different. You got a guy who can run the high post, the mid post, low post, and you can use him as a passing hub. So I think you can run more 3 guard sets with Sabonis than you can with almost any center. I mean, it's kind of what we see out of Denver all the time with Jokic. They run all kinds of 3 guard sets, all kinds of crazy stuff all the time. So, look, this team just needs to find like a handful of professionals to bring in, and by hook or by crook, you got to figure out a way to do it. Like, if you want to talk about, your goal being this, if not, like, we're looking at 17 without any question, like year 17, like, because they're again, right now, as we sit, they don't have Dante DiVincenzo. They haven't made a commitment to Trey Lyles that we know of. They don't have Damian Jones. Like, there is a lot of work that has to be done, and none of those guys are full-fledged like franchise changers anyways. Are they good pieces to have? Sure. But, we're talking about guys that can help you win a game or 2 here but they're not like your franchise changing players.
The Damian Jones thing feels a little complicated as well, because when we saw him, I feel like he's a fine player, especially in limited minutes behind Domantas Sabonis. But I feel like you can only make that move if Rashawn's not here. Like, signing Damian Jones back and Rashawn still being here, just that feels silly.
Well, especially since you have Nebius Keita and you still have Alex Len. Like, people forget this team still has Alex Len. No, I mean, he's still there. You still owe him $4 million.
I know. Give him his $4 million. Like, come on. Like, what are we doing? Like, I know toughness, blah, blah, blah. Like, I get it. Like, come on. That ain't it.
No, but what I'm saying is, like, look, that's where we're talking. Like, if you bring back Damian Jones, who is the best natural fit as your backup center, you have 5 centers on the roster.
Okay, so Alex Lynn's got to go. It doesn't make sense to sign anyone at that position if Rashawn Holmes is still here.
Right.
And like, yeah, the Neemias Queta, I'm completely all in on that. Like, I get that line of thinking. Neemias Queta was a 2nd-round pick that Monty McNair seemed to really like last year, that we kind of saw sporadically at times, that I'd like to see what he could do.
Yeah, me too. No,
in limited minutes, like not having to start for 15 or 16 games.
No, I'm okay if he's your 3rd center. Yeah. That's what I would expect. That's what you would hope, that the Kings were able to manipulate their roster a bit. Like, but again, if you don't have room on your roster to go take the 37th pick in the draft, but you got 4 centers, like how long does that have to happen? I guess maybe next season, like they mix it up and those guys, Alex Lynn is no longer under contract, but like it's an unbalanced roster. It has been for a while. There's not enough forwards. They added 1 in the draft. They need more. They could have traded for John Collins, drafted Keegan Murray, and traded for Jeremy Grant, and then we'd be talking about a really nice 3 forward rotation. Not that I think that they could have got Grant. I don't know what happened. What's that?
I just don't know how they could have pulled that off. That seems like I also think we need to acknowledge something. Maybe Monty just doesn't like John Collins. Like, I don't really like John Collins that much. Like, maybe Monty McNair doesn't. Like, maybe all of these names that we throw around, Monty's just like, no, like, that's not going to make this team better. Maybe Monty McNair sees this roster a little bit differently than we do.
Yeah, because I had someone say, well,
hey, that's a good point.
Someone said maybe they're saving up their cap space, and I'm like, okay, next year they've got it's like $65 million or something in salary cap space. But I'll just come back to the same thing. When have the Kings ever been able to go out and spend that money on like A-list free agents? And you can say, oh, there's always a first time for everything. It's like, okay, when is that first time going to happen? Because it doesn't matter how much they have. Like, again, right now you're looking, some crazy team was able to go make a run and say, hey, Kyrie and hey, Bradley Beal, you guys want to team up and we'll give you like carte blanche to do whatever you want with our franchise. That's a possibility. There's no team out there that has that kind of money, but like that doesn't happen in Sacramento. Like, it's just being realistic about it. Like, can you get Marco Bellinelli? Can you get a 40-year-old Vince Carter? Can you get Zebo at 36 or George Hill, who like wanted to get paid? Sure. But outside of that, like this franchise does not have the opportunity to go out and compete with the big dogs. That's just the way it is. Now they can retain their own players. That happens all the time because people love it once they get to Sacramento. But going out and getting an unrestricted free agent and signing him, it's just proven to be like nearly impossible.
I right now am leaning towards Monty McNair being passive and not really being aggressive. Is that fair?
Well, I can tell you a lot of time he's passive aggressive. But like, if you want to be employed at mid-season, you better not be passive, because like the finger pointing on whose fault this is, like you just paid Mike Brown for a 4-year contract or whatever it is. We don't know exactly what, I think it's 4 years. But like if that's the case, then like somebody better like get their lease in order, because I mean, that's just not like, if you're going to be 10 games under 500 in December, that's not a good sign.
It's like what I'm saying though. Is that fair? You know what I'm saying? Because I just feel like he's the type of guy that he's not impulsive, which could be a really good thing. I understand that, but he's also a guy. Well, let's just take some time. Let's see how this goes. And people like last night, it just seemed like the league was moving. The league was moving. And Monty's just like, I'm good, And I'm like, man, I just feel like I need a little bit more aggression. And we talk about the Sabonis move, which is a great move by him. I love it. But I could be wrong. I feel like that came 30 games too late. Like that could have happened like 20 games before it happened.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're in a position where you can be passive. Like, he's in the final year of a contract. Like, you need to move and shake. Like, everyone knows it. I mean, and I guess maybe a little bit that's unfortunate that everyone knows it. It would be easier if you were in a situation where you were solid on solid grounds. And that's not to say that he doesn't get extended between now and October. But, I mean, you got to show me you can build something.
Is the team better now than it was when he took it over?
I don't know. I mean, it's certainly better than the team he put on the court that first year. But again, that's because he let Bogdanovich go. He didn't retain, Kent Bazemore. He didn't retain Alex Len then, when Alex Len was actually a functioning part of what was happening. That's a good question, though. I mean, it's certainly different. I mean, the only 3 players left on the roster from when Monty took over the team are Fox, Barnes, and Holmes. That's it.
31 wins the year before he took over, 31 the year he came in, 30 last year.
Yeah.
I feel like because they have the bonus, I feel like they're better. But I mean, when you talk about the bottom line numbers, it's hard to say it definitively.
Yeah, because I mean, you could even make the argument that De'Aaron Fox took a major step back during his time here. Like during not Fox's time, but during Monty's time in Sacramento. And some of the time, and there's a direct link between not pulling the trigger on a trade last offseason and where Fox came into the season and his attitude during the season and where you ended up.
But that's not pulling a trigger. Unless you're talking about something else, that's a deal falling apart.
Well, yeah, but the deal fell apart. Like, Monty talked about it last night. They had like 30-something options. Like, one deal fell apart. Okay. Dust yourself off. What's the next one? Like, I mean, in all honesty, are we in a situation right now where a John Collins deal fell apart?
So, I thought you referenced last offseason. My apologies.
No. I was.
You're talking about the Buddy.
You're talking about Buddy. Yeah.
So,
but what I'm saying is that deal fell apart. Okay, we'll go make the next deal.
Well, I understand that, but also at the same time, if I'm Monty McNair, at least to a certain degree, I'm thinking I just had that was just a perfect deal. Buddy Hield and whatever it looked like for Kyle Kuzma, that was flawless for this organization. Monty's got to be. I have to imagine at least some of Monty's thinking, well, I just had Kyle Kuzma. That was perfect. I got to be able to find something along that caliber. That didn't exist because of and I'm sure to a certain degree Monty knew this too. The Lakers were so freaking thirsty. They would have, like, there was no other team that probably would have done that deal for that player because it was so specific. But I mean, I can understand to a certain degree. I can understand Monty thinking, man, is there anything of that caliber still out there? Because that was just so. I don't know how different the season would have been had that deal gone through, but I do believe it would have been different for so many different reasons.
I think we forget too that for 3.5 months of the season, it just hung over the team's head whether they were going to trade for Ben Simmons or not. And it wasn't until the Kings went to go play in Philly that they sat down and clearly had a meeting of the minds between Morey and McNair.
Look, Monty, we're playing you. That's pretty much what's happening. We're playing you publicly. So
I mean, you knew very quickly that wasn't happening, right? So my point though is that you can't just sit there and wait again. You're not in a position where you can just sit and wait, because this is another year of Sabonis's career, another year of Fox's, I mean, again, 2 years he just wasted of Fox's career. Like, no question. Like, the first year you lost your starting your starting shooting guard, and you didn't replace him. You lost 2 of your rotational pieces. You didn't replace them. Well, you did with Hassan Whiteside and Glenn Robinson, but you really didn't replace them. And then you get to the next season, and you're on hold the whole year, waiting for someone to pick up and say, "Yeah, we'll make that deal." Like, that's a lot to ask. Like, to just say, "Hey, stand pat." Like, we're at a point right now. It's like, build it if you can. If you can't, then maybe you can't. Maybe no one wants anything that they have. That's always a possibility.
Right.
But like, you have to act now. So your question, should they be passive or aggressive? They have to be aggressive. You got the clock ticking on Fox. You got certainly the clock ticking on Sabonis's contract. You got to prove up. Like, putting him out there and letting him win the 4th pick and, hooray, Sabonis, that's great. He's going to want to win, because teams that do win are going to come after him in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to be up against it. Can you actually retain him or not? That's going to be the question. So, yeah, you got to build it right now. So that's where I do get not drafting Jaden Ivey. Because if you do draft Jaden Ivey, you're asking Fox and Sabonis to wait. Keegan Murray, it's a dude who's going to walk in and play 28 minutes a night as a rookie, most likely. So, yeah, I mean, this is like a player that should be able to fit in very quickly. He's almost 22. He's a mature body. He knows how to play the game.
And can we point out too, that's a massive positive. The fact that he can walk in almost unquestioned right out the gate and play in a position of need for the Kings.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's why people I really like Keegan Murray. That it's never been about Keegan Murray as much as it is at number 4, it's tough. That's the only problem that I have.
But is it tough if he was projected at 5?
Well, it is if there's a big drop off between 4 and 5.
And once again, but the Damon,
I am the beholder. Yeah.
That's up to people's opinion, really.
No, I get you. I get you. No, I mean, and they can say that they had everyone in the room was, they had a consensus. Everybody thought that he was the guy. Their coaching staff, their front office, their numbers guys, everyone said.
What did Doug Critic think? Because quite honestly, that's all I care about.
He didn't have to say that, by the way.
Yeah.
He didn't have to say that.
Yeah, look, I really like Keegan Murray, and I think fans in Sacramento should open him wide open arms, like embrace him, because he's going to be a good ball player. But be realistic about who he is and the impact he can have on your franchise in year 1, year 2, year 5. Be realistic about what his impact can have.
Well, let me finish this day by saying Keegan Murray's going to be really good. I can't wait to see him at the California Classic. Unfortunately, it won't be here in Sacramento, but I can't wait to see him at the California Classic. I can't wait to see him in Summer League. I like that guy's game a lot, and I can't wait to see him with Fox and Sabonis. I think he's going to fit really well with those guys. He's going to play really well with those guys.
Keegan Murray is so good. They left him out of the top 5 fixture that the NBA took last night. They decided to just have picks 1, 2, 3, and 5.
That's just
But again, I'll be honest with you, what happened there. The Kings lost their media relations staff that's experienced and knows how to knows where to bring people, and the person that was there, I don't think they knew the stations and where to go and all that stuff, like the standard stuff, because they also, just so you know, they also missed that point where you bring the draft pick and have them talk to your local media. So we didn't get Keegan Murray last night at all. For the first time, I think, since Jimmer, we didn't get a conversation with the draft pick last night because they messed up. And
I actually thought it was the double-breasted suit that kept him out of the picture.
No, that was actually pretty fresh.
It was okay. I
like the double-breasted.
I'll give Keegan this. Not everybody can do that. Like there's a lot that I can do fashion wise that I'm not afraid of. I'm not wearing a double-breasted suit.
I didn't like the cut, but I like the suit.
Mm.
Gotta find him a nice tailor here.
If we're going basic, I really like Jabari's basic suit. But I also wonder if that's what got him taking it through. Like we saw the suit and we're like, I don't know, Paolo looks like a number 1 pick. Like we've got to take him. Any thoughts on that big change at the top with Paolo Banchero going number 1 over Jabari and Chet?
That was wild. To be honest with you, there needs to be an investigation.
Oh my!
Wait, why? About what? Like with Vegas knowing?
Yeah, because Vegas knew the night before something happened there. Something weird happened. The way that thing changed.
Isn't that how it works?
Vegas
I don't
always knows.
The way that people made money on that deal. I
Vegas
don't know.
always knows.
I don't know. They don't usually know like that.
Relegated due to a gambling scandal involving Paolo Banchero.
I don't know what happened there. Somebody knew something about something and changed something. And
well, I tried to end on a fun note, but
there you go.
He wants an NBA investigation. That's not happening today. So we're just going to head into our weekend. We thank you so much for being with us.